The following is a lecture by His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Mahārāja on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrit Adi Leela, Chapter 7, Verse number 92, delivered on May 23, 1982 in Vancouver, Canada.
So this translation and purport is very, very significant because, as Prabhupada also comments in the purport, it is the desire of the spiritual master to see that all his sincere disciples are engaged in dancing, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and preaching the value of chanting kṛṣṇa-nāma. This is the expectation that the spiritual master has from every disciple of his. So this means that every disciple should make a serious effort to become Krishna conscious and should understand the purpose of spiritual life. It is unfortunate that the purpose of spiritual life is very often forgotten. In the same Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada talks about different types of Vaishnavas. And in talking about the different Vaishnavas, he explains that there are essentially three categories of Vaishnavas. One are known as the Kanishta Vaishnavas, the other are known as the Madhyam Vaishnavas, and the topmost are the Uttama Vaishnavas. So the Kanishta Vaishnava is defined as one who is only concerned about chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, just doing the minimum performance of the rituals needed, which would call him a Vaishnava, and nothing beyond that. And the Madhyam Vaishnava is one who is doing the minimum rituals needed for the execution of devotional service, at the same time is also concerned about the Lord's desire to see the conditioned souls engaged in the process of Krishna consciousness. So this Krishna conscious movement was started by Srila Prabhupada to create Madhyam Vaishnavas. There is no shortage of Kanishta Vaishnavas. If one goes to Vrindavan, there are so many Vaishnavas. Almost everyone in Vrindavan is walking around with a bead bag. But they are all called Kanishta Vaishnavas because their concept of Vaishnavism is worshipping Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna, and worrying about whatever little they need for their own survival. Definitely, this is way ahead of those who worship the demigods or those who don't believe in the existence of the Lord at all. It's miles ahead of their level. But we should not fool ourselves to think that all Vaishnavas are on the same platform. So this Krishna conscious movement was designed to make Madhyam Vaishnavas, and Prabhupada states this in the purport, that he wants every disciple of this Krishna conscious movement to at least be a Madhyam Vaishnava. So this movement is encouraging everyone to practice Krishna consciousness and to put oneself in a renounced mood. Just like in the last line of this purport, Prabhupada states, one should be detached from material enjoyment and should accept everything in connection with Krishna's service. So we have to become detached from material enjoyment. Prahlāda Mahārāja, in the verse we read in the purport, says that the materials are rotting in material activities because they are looking for transient material pleasure and spoiling their lives. So we should not think that this is only applicable to the materialists, Even when one commences spiritual life and doesn't detach from material enjoyment and doesn't understand that material pleasure is only transient, and if one gets attracted to this material pleasure that is transient, he will be spoiling his life. Then one cannot make spiritual progress. To make spiritual progress, we must develop detachment from material enjoyment. We must understand that any so-called material pleasure is only transient, and the real pleasure can be obtained if one engages in devotional service to Krishna and to the spiritual master all the time. This point has been stressed very often in our preaching, but it is necessary to stress this point again and again, because, as we've often said, the conditioning of the living entity is so strong that one tends to forget the essential message, even though one has heard it on numerous occasions. So it is also our request that all the members of this community keep this verse in the forefront of their minds. This instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that my dear child, continue dancing, chanting and performing saṅkīrtana in association with devotees, for they may go out and preach the value of chanting kṛṣṇa-nāma. For with this process you will be able to deliver all fallen souls. This instruction is applicable to everyone in this Krishna conscious movement. This instruction is not only for the brahmacharis or the brahmacharinis, no. This instruction and desire of the Lord is for every member of this Krishna conscious movement, regardless of the varna or ashrama one may belong to, whether one is a brahmachari or grihastha or vanaprastha or sannyas. His real business is only this one: to chant, dance and perform saṅkīrtana, and to propagate the chanting of kṛṣṇa-nāma for the benefit of the entire humanity. So we have to analyze our performance against this instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just like when one is working for a farming organization, there are certain standards that they have set up for every position in the company. And then at the end of every year, there is what they call a job review period, where they review your salary. And against that standard that has been established, they see how have you performed this past year. And if on most of the characteristics the performance has been good, then one gets what is known as a raise, or a review, or even a scolding if he hasn't performed well on certain criteria. So similarly, the criteria for every devotee in this Krishna conscious movement is that he must dance, chant and perform saṅkīrtana in association with devotees and just propagate the value of chanting Hare Krishna. These make up 5 characteristics. So these 5 characteristics form the benchmark against which every devotee should constantly review himself. And if in any area the devotee finds that he is lacking, then an effort should be made to catch up in that area of weakness. After all, devotional service doesn't mean that one becomes complacent. Devotional service doesn't mean that there is no room for improvement. Karmi organizations have the slogan that they try harder. So if a Karmi is willing to try harder to improve his service, why aren't we ready to try harder to improve our service? So these 5 points, and I repeat again, to chant in the association of devotees, dance, perform saṅkīrtana, and go and teach the value of chanting Hare Krishna, this is the standard that every devotee has to realize and reach. Doesn't matter what ashram he may be in. This is a totally false concept that is developed within certain segments of our society, that if one is in the householder ashram, he does not have to do these things. Nowhere in Prabhupada's books has he ever talked like that. If he does talk, I would like to see that. Throughout all his purports and his letters, Prabhupada has emphasized that we should detach from material enjoyment, we should minimize our material possessions so that we can maximize our devotion to Krishna. That is the guiding principle. And if we all keep these guiding principles in mind, then we will succeed on the spiritual path. Otherwise, progress on the spiritual path will be very difficult. It may appear that we are making progress because we are putting on Gila for years and years. We are coming to the program, chanting 16 rounds. But it should not be forgotten that according to the explanation in this Chaitanya Charitamrita, that would be performance of devotional service at the Kanishta level. But that is not a very high level. That doesn't give the spiritual master the greatest pleasure. What gives the spiritual master the greatest pleasure has been stated in the verse that we have just read. So this should be the guiding principle for every devotee, and not only the new Gopala Dham community, but in every community within this Krishna conscious movement. And based on my conversations with different leaders around the world, I've come to understand that this is the standard that is being practiced in many parts of the world. In many parts of the world, like in Australia, in France, in Italy, in Spain, in New Zealand, and even in England. This is the standard that is being expected of every devotee who lives there. And to chant, dance, perform saṅkīrtana, and propagate the value of chanting Hare Krishna. So every devotee should make a concentrated effort to participate in these activities. As they say in the English language, if there's a will, there's a way. So we are determined to practice and propagate the instructions that we have received from the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. And the Lord will make all facilities available. The Lord is waiting for our determination and our initiative. So we should take the initiative. We should be determined that I will evaluate myself on these different points that are mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And if any one area I'm found to be lacking, I'll work hard and even take the assistance of those who are more advanced than myself so that I can come up on that yardstick also. So we all work with this mentality, then we will all be in the preaching mood. Then we will all be in the mood to save the conditioned souls. It is unfortunate that even after hearing the philosophy day in and day out and chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, our hearts have still not melted. Because when our hearts melt, that's when we become compassionate in practice. And when the heart has not melted, then means that the anarthas are still being maintained in the heart. So the goal of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra is to melt the heart. Is to make our heart so soft that when you see anyone doing any activity not related to Krishna, you begin to feel sorry for that individual. Just like in the mature world you have, sometimes you say it's a stone-hearted person. So even within this Krishna conscious movement, definitely our members are not so stone-hearted because they are practicing four regulative principles and chanting Hare Krishna. But the heart has to melt further. If by being in this Krishna conscious movement, we are not developing the preaching mood. We are not developing the mood of vairagya, renunciation. We are not developing the mood of giving up material attachments. That means that our heart is still stone-hearted. Our heart is not melting fast enough. And that is a very serious disease. Just like as soon as one sees a symptom of a major disease, he runs to the doctor to get an operation. So similarly, as long as these symptoms are there in the form of some material desires in the form of increasing material possessions, in the form of always worrying about what's going to happen to my situation. It will just be like my. In Krishna consciousness, that my has to be replaced with Krishna. One of the characteristics of mature life is that one only wants to do what one finds the best for himself. And if something is good for him, he will not hesitate to go to harm anyone to any extent. So similarly, sometimes we see whenever devotees, they become so concerned about their own welfare, their own facilities, so the higher cause of serving Krishna gets lost. So we have to melt our hearts, and our heart has to become compassionate upon seeing the conditioned souls. When we see that the population of the conditioned souls is remaining high, we should feel very sorry and think, how can these conditioned souls, some of the other be engaged in devotional service? Everyone has the ability to engage the conditioned soul in devotional service. It is not very difficult. It's very easy. Prabhupada has given us numerous instructions in which he has taught us how to engage the conditioned souls in devotional service. But we just have to become determined to do it. So our request to all the members of this community is that some of the other we have to try harder to propagate Krishna consciousness. We have to melt our hearts a little more faster. We have to become a little more soft-hearted. We have to give up our anarthas a little faster. Of course, the anarthas are disappearing, but they're not disappearing at a very fast rate. We should get rid of our anarthas a little faster, and the faster we surrender everything to the Lord, the faster will be our spiritual progress. Our mood should be a Thakur Bhakti mode. We cannot say that Thakur Bhakti mode is very exalted, but I'm a fallen grihastha. If you think that you're fallen, you will always remain fallen. But if you think that there is room for improvement and you have to follow the great sages, then you'll attempt to follow the great sages. So Thakur Bhakti said, Manasa Deha Geha Yokicho Mora, Arkulam Priya Pade, Nam Kishora. My dear Lord, I place everything in my possession at your command, and you may use it as you like. That should be the mood of the devotee. And if we operate in that mood, then spiritual life will become very blissful. The reason we turn sometimes to material comforts or material possessions is because spiritual life is not satisfying us. And why is spiritual life not satisfying us? Because we are not surrendering completely. So once we realize that no amount of material activity or possession can give one as much satisfaction as surrender to Krishna, then that will be the real standard of our success. This realization must be there. And this realization is possible if we are constantly evaluating ourselves on these dimensions that we discussed. To what extent am I chanting in the association of devotees? To what extent am I dancing in the association of devotees? To what extent am I performing saṅkīrtana in association with devotees? And to what extent am I going out and propagating the value of chanting Hare Krishna in association with devotees? And if we are not doing all these characteristics, all these points that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has mentioned, that means that we are not really advancing fast, that we are not leading our spiritual master completely. The spiritual master is more speed when he sees that a disciple is absorbed in thoughts of serving Krishna. This is the only desire of the spiritual master, to make the conditions all completely dependent upon Krishna, so to be completely absorbed in thinking about Krishna. So, this is a mood that we would like to see develop in the community here. This is a very wonderful community. We have a very nice facility. Krishna has blessed us with this nice location. very beautiful deities. But we have to somehow or the other work even harder to expand Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not expanding as fast a pace as it could in this part of the world, but it could expand faster. But in order to make it expand faster, every member of the community has to make a greater contribution towards telling others the value of chanting Hare Krishna. So now we can have